What's up, my friends? Welcome back. We're going to talk about my top 10 favorite albums of 1984. 1984. If that's backwards, that's because I'm using my front-facing camera, and usually it flips it around. I'm not sure if it's going to, but I appreciate if you could prescribe to my channel and leave a comment, and let's just get into it. My number 10 album is Whitesnake Slide It In. This is an album that I tried to revisit a few years ago, and it didn't really hit very well. The entendres in all the lyrics and some of the song titles just were a little cringe, and I'm not sure if I heard the UK version, but it just didn't do it for me. Luckily, I revisited it recently, and for some reason, it just shot onto my list. It almost slipped under the radar because it was originally released in 1983, but they reissued it in 1984 after having a more Americanized producer. It was originally produced by Martin Birch, and they had Keith Olsen revamp it, re-recorded a lot of guitar parts and stuff. David Coverdale revamped the lineup because up until this point, Whitesnake was kind of looked like a bunch of old guys playing dinosaur, bluesy, hard rock, and he really wanted to cross over into the American market. So in a couple of twists of fate and then a couple of deliberate actions, he almost replaced the whole band except for the drummer Cozy Powell, who's one of the best drummers that's ever lived. John Lord had quit to go back to the reformed Deep Purple, and they got Neil Murray on bass, a longtime Black Sabbath bass player, and John Sykes, the legendary John Sykes, on guitar, and he just looked like a guitar hero. He played the shit out of the guitar. He was great showmanship, and he was a good-looking guy, long blonde hair, and that's the version of Whitesnake that toured America after the re-recording of this album. So good. Obviously, like I said, there's on double entendre lyrics: spit it out, slide it in, slow and easy. Even though Slow and Easy is a great song. All of them are great songs. Love Ain't No Stranger was kind of like a precursor to the Here I Go Again, kind of a ballady thing at the beginning and then kicks in a little harder later. The album kicks off with Gambler, which is kind of a mid-tempo rocker that's really good melodies, really bluesy, and Guilty of Love. That was the single when it was originally released in England. It's got that twin harmony, which is funny that they got John Sykes because he played with Thin Lizzy at one point. And it's got the real crazy harmony guitar parts. And real Thin Lizzy sounding. Give me just a little more time. That song is beautiful. All the songs are great on this album. It was kind of the transition between the old bluesy rock that Whitesnake was doing up to that point and the hair band, more metal sound that John Sykes was able to provide for David Coverdale on the 87 album. And God, I love this album so much. It's interesting. I want to mention that I had put that album in at number 10 weeks ago when I wrote this list, and since then, John Sykes, guitar legend, has passed away, and it's super sad. He never played on near as much stuff as he should have. He's on these two. No, he's not even. Yeah, he's on some of this album. He's on the self-titled 1987 Still of the Night, Here I Go Again album. And he did 2 albums with Blue Murder. And since the 90s, he really hasn't put out a lot of stuff. So now that he's passed, hopefully somebody associated with him will release some of that music, and we'll be able to at least posthumously get some of that great John Sykes guitar stuff. Anyway, moving on. Number 9, I have The Art of Noise. Who's Afraid of the Art of Noise? I've talked about in several of my 1984 videos. The more I go down the rabbit hole, Trevor Horn is one of the greatest producers of all time. Just in this year alone, he did The Art of Noise. He did the Band-Aid tribute to charity single. He did the Yes 90125 album, and some other stuff that I can't remember. He did Frankie Goes to Hollywood's Relax, and you listen to The Art of Noise, you hear that Fairlight synthesizer that not a lot of people could get. There was only a handful of people. The first person to get one was Peter Gabriel, and a lot of people would rent his studio to use that synthesizer. Several people ended up with them. Trevor Horn ended up with one. Kate Bush ended up with one. John Paul Jones ended up with one. Some of the other really top of the line keyboard players and producers ended up using it because it was so prohibitively expensive. I think they cost like $40,000, $50,000, which in today's money is like almost $250,000 for a synthesizer. But what it did, it was like a sampler and synthesizer. And you listen to the sounds on that Art of Noise album and get familiar with them, you can hear it all over anything he produces. In the middle of Owner of a Lonely Heart, right before it goes to the guitar solo, it's got those bam, 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 bam. That's all sampled. That's all sampled stuff on the Fairlight. All of the sounds in the Frankie Goes to Hollywood song are all sampled on that Fairlight. It's an amazing, groundbreaking piece of machinery at the time. Number 8, we have Metallica, Ride the Lightning. We'll switch gears into some of that. And I grew up a metalhead for years and years and years. If I would have made this list back then, I was a little too young still to have gotten into some of the stuff actually in 1984, but not by 1985, 86, 87. I was full bore, and my whole list would have been made up with the Merciful Fate and Dokken and Rat and Dio and Iron Maiden and all of that. But this is really the only straight metal album that made my top 10 because I think it was just so groundbreaking. Kill 'Em All was a good start for the band, but it overall, if you know Metallica's sound, it's just kind of you could tell it's a bunch of teenagers making thrash music, inventing thrash music, I should say. But by Ride the Lightning, they had met the producer Fleming Rashomon, who Lars picked because he liked the Rainbow albums that he produced. And this is really where their sound started to develop. All of their gear was stolen a few weeks before they were supposed to go in the studio, so the whole thing is recorded on scrounged together gear and rented stuff. This album started off their sequencing formula that they used for all of the Fleming Rashomon albums, where they would start with a thrash song and then do the title track and then do a mid-tempo song and then do a ballad, and then you flip the record over and it's the whole rest of the album. Fight Fire with Fire, it's the first time they used acoustic guitars. The intro is beautiful sounding. The song itself, I think, is a little by the book, kind of just typical thrash, which I give them credit because they were inventing the genre as they were going, so it sounds typical because that's the blueprint that everybody else used. But in hindsight, I feel like it's a little by the book. But the intro to the song Ride the Lightning is leftover Dave Mustaine lick. That song's pretty neat. They do Whom the Bell Tolls, which of course Cliff Burton has his beautiful bass line that makes up most of that song. I'm kind of sick of that song. That seems to be the song that everybody wants to go to when they want to play that, and I can't play that song in a bar band. It just reminds me too much of playing in garage bands when I was a teenager, and it just makes me feel stupid. Fade to Black, I think, is the best ballad that Metallica ever did. The solos are beautiful. The way it builds is just natural. I love that song so much. Trapped Under Ice, I feel, is a little by the book. That's my least favorite song on this album. It just seems kind of throwaway to me. They were a little short on songs, so they had to write a song in the studio, and the record label wanted them to write something that was a little more commercial, so they wrote Escape, and I think collectively they and most of their fans dislike that song. But to me, besides Fade to Black, it's my favorite song on this album. I think it's catchy. I think the riffs are neat. The lyrics are beautiful. And I don't know why they hate that song so much. Creeping Death is another one that I think is probably very, very defining Metallica song. And I think they think so too, because I think they've started their shows with that song since those days, and they still do. I don't know about how they still do, but up until at least the 90s and the 2000s, they'd start all their shows with Creeping Death. The middle section, the die part, is something that Kirk Hammett had brought over from an Exodus song when he was a member of Exodus. And the last song is another beautiful song. I don't know why they never put lyrics to it. It could have been another huge ballad. But it's another Dave Mustaine thing. It's actually, the chords goes through that climbing, ascending note. It's called a line motif. A line cliche, that's what it's called. And it's the exact same chords as Hangar 18. You can go and listen to those two songs back to back, and you'll hear what I'm talking about. But it's an instrumental, and it's super long, and it builds and builds and builds, and that song is amazing. Number 7, we have the Scorpions, Love at First Sting. And when I first look at the list of albums from a certain year or this year, Scorpions would not have been one that I would have originally picked, But like I've said in several videos, their sound, especially that some of that earlier sound and stuff, just goes right to my soul. His voice is just cuts right through me. And in 1984, when I first heard Rock You Like a Hurricane, those solos are so biting and perfect and fast and melodic at the same time. And oh my goodness, it changed my life. Still Loving You is a ballad that's not even in the heavy metal world, but just in the world in general, is one of my favorite ballads of all time. The way it builds and his voice just soars over everything. It's a song I love to play. I have to play it down tuned quite a bit. I can't hit that note that he hits, but it's such a fun song to sing. And then other songs, Crossfire is a great one. It's kind of a slow build. Big City Nights and I'm Leaving You are great. Big stadium songs that just translates to a big stage so well. Coming Home is another that was sort of a ballady kind of thing. Oh, that album is so good, especially when I started listening to it to get prepared for these lists. So, man, that one just stuck around for one of the longest. Number 6, Rush, Grace Under Pressure. This is a period in Rush's career where a lot of their fans that aren't hardcore fans kind of fall off. It's a little darker album. It feels cold to me, and the cover even looks icy and cold. And it's right in the middle of the Cold War era, so a lot of the songs are about war and nuclear fallout and all of that kind of stuff. The stabs on the keyboards and the guitars are real, like they remind me of air raid sirens. And I think Distant Early Warning is one of the best Rush songs out of their whole career. And I didn't really get to dive really deep because right in the middle of making my playlists for this year, the CSAC thing happened, and they took all of, was it UMG or EMI? They took all of their music off of YouTube for a period, and so I couldn't listen to it for a while, and I just forgot to go back to it. But yeah, still made my list at number 6. Number 5, The Talking Heads, Stop Making Sense. I'm a humongous Talking Heads fan, and this album has all of their best songs on it. The movie is amazing, directed by Jonathan Demme before he went on to do Silence of the Lambs. And the setup is great. He comes out by himself. David Byrne comes out by himself and sets a boombox down. All you see is his feet. And he pushes play, and it's a little drum track. And he plays Psycho Killer by himself. And then the next song, Tina Weymouth comes out and plays bass with him. And then one at a time, all of the members come out and they play songs. And one song at a time before they end up with all of the 4 band members, an extra keyboard player, and backup singers, and I can't remember if there's other people playing besides that, but just, and then it's the whole thing, and they just build the set, build the stage as they go, and then it goes into all of the stuff where he does the thing with the big suit, his little head on top of it, and he does a little dance with the light, with the lamp and the lampshade, and then they do one song where you can see the lights shine big shadows up on the walls, and just the cinematography of the movie is amazing. You can't talk about the music at all because it's just I would be here all day talking about the music, but the movie is amazing. They don't show the audience until right towards the end. Excuse me. All right, number 4, King Crimson, Three of a Perfect Pair. This is the last of the 3 80s albums that they did. Genius lineup: Bill Bruford, Adrian Belew, Robert Fripp, and Tony Levin. And my ear is a lot better now than it was when I was listening to this back in the day. I found this cassette sometime in the late 80s, and I didn't understand it, but I listened to it over and over and over again. Just completely different sound than their 70s sound. Now that my ear's a lot better, I feel like I could tell the difference between Adrian Belew's guitar playing and Robert Fripp's guitar playing. But I've watched some of the videos of the Beat Tour that they did this year in tribute to these 3 80s albums. And Steve Vai plays so much different than Robert Fripp that there was some stuff that Adrian Belew was playing that I would have swore was Robert Fripp riffs. And they may have been. I don't know if they swapped stuff. But so good. I like I said, once again, I can't even talk about how good the music is because I'd have to do a whole video on song by song. It's neat listening to it now because I feel like as my ear has gotten better and as a musician, I can tell which songs were completely improvised in the studio. And so that makes it a little fun. Obviously the real intricate stuff and the stuff where they'll play together. And then at some point, one of them will either add a note or drop a note. So as they're going in synchronize the riff, one of them will add an extra note so it pushes it off time. So the way then it gets staggered, and then it takes so long for it to come, and then at some point it all comes back together. And it's the kind of stuff that Tool does, and they got it directly from King Crimson, which is why it was such a genius thing to have Danny Carey playing drums on that Beat Tour. I can't talk about King Crimson enough. Number 3, Steve Vai's Flexible. I can't express enough how influential this album was to me growing up. This is the... what am I trying to say? He's got all of the Frank Zappa influence that he had from working with him for so many years. But it's the perfect bridge between the Zappa sound and sense of humor and stylings and like a straight ahead shredder guitar Eddie Van Halen thing. He's the perfect bridge between Zappa and Eddie Van Halen, which is just what I needed at that time learning these songs. Because like the first song is called Little Green Men, and he does a lot of the sped up stuff. It almost sounds like it could be a Ween song. And I listened to it. I listened to the crap out of it because but some of the other stuff is more guitar stuff. The next song is Viv Woman, which is a straight up Van Halen thing. Lovers Are Crazy. He made this album in a way that, what am I trying to say? He built a studio in his home, and this album was the stuff that he recorded to learn how to record. And songs like Lovers Are Crazy and the Boy Girl song and Junkie are all so bizarre. Uh, but the songwriting is great. And he would have people come in and do things that he couldn't do. Some of the singing, some of the things that I didn't appreciate back in the day was some of the horn arrangements. The horn arrangements are insane because I'm sure he wrote them all out and had them play them, and all the recordings are pristine. But he also does a lot of the guitar stuff that you would expect. A ballad is called Call It Sleep, and it's so pretty. And then at some point it clicks and you hear this feedback that where you could just tell it was like the way the Van Halen recorded. You could tell that guitar was so loud in the studio, and his playing is just on fire. There's a song called Attitude Song, which was the first song that he made. It was originally released on one of those little plastic flexi discs that came in a Guitar Player magazine. And it's got a bizarre, like, 3/16 time signature, but not really, because there's kind of, it's a stutter. It's like the soloing is on fire. And then he's got a song called Salamanders in the Sun. That's one of my favorites because it's called Salamanders in the Sun. And what it sounds like to me is it sounds like one of those songs when you would watch Sesame Street and they would do like a video of them. Like I picture a bunch of lizards running around in the desert. And it's like, it starts off and there's a lot of the marimba, like xylophone type of stuff that Frank Zappa would use, but then like about halfway through, he comes in with a guitar and plays all the same melodies on guitar. It's just so beautiful, so beautiful. Yeah, Flexible by Steve Vai. Man, you gotta hear it to believe it. My top two favorite albums of 1984 will kind of peg me as a basic bitch. They flip-flopped back and forth a couple of times. I just can't decide which should be at number one or number two. So I'm going to mention Van Halen 1984 first. Total groundbreaking album. Pushed them to the top of the heap as far as hard rock bands and crossing over into pop that you could get at that time. Jump was our first number one song. I think I remember it ended up being like number 6 in the year end, which is crazy in a year that had Madonna and Prince and Michael Jackson and all of that stuff going on at the same time, George Michael. And the song I'll Wait was the other keyboard song. And my favorite story about that is that they brought in Michael McDonald to either, depending on whose story you believe, to either write the top line for it because David Lee Roth couldn't think of anything for it, or to just help like smooth out the edges or whatever. And they didn't put his name on it because he was the king of adult contemporary or soft rock or yacht rock or whatever you want to call it. And heavy metal band like Van Halen couldn't be associated with somebody like Michael McDonald at that time. So there's a lot of controversy surrounding that. But you still got all of the hard rock stuff. Panama is a killer song. I'm kind of sick of it because that's kind of the go-to for every hard rock cover band. That and Ain't Talking About Love, because it's the easiest Van Halen song to learn. Ain't Talking About Love is kind of like the killing in the name of for Van Halen. It's the only song by that guitar player that an average guitar player can play. So it's the one that every band plays. And every band does Panama, which a lot of them don't do it right because there's a timing thing in there that's just pure Van Halen brothers. And speaking of that timing thing, Hot for Teacher, not only is that guitar part amazing and the drum part is near impossible, putting those two together is near impossible. I don't know if I've ever heard a cover band do Hot for Teacher because it would just be almost impossible. I had a phenomenal drummer for years and years, and we would try Hot for Teacher so many times, and the timing is just so bizarre because it just sounds like a Texas Boogie, ZZ Top type of song, but the timing of it is just crazy. Girl Gone Bad is got a crazy beginning part. I say acoustic, but it's more of a mellow thing, and that song is beautiful. Top Jimmy's a fun one. House of Pain is the oldest song that they... that goes all the way back to their club days. That's probably the last time, as far as I know, that's the last old song that they resurrected for a Van Halen album. Obviously, all the rest of the stuff would be Sammy Hagar stuff, so they wouldn't be resurrecting David Lee Roth stuff anyway. But my favorite song on the whole album is Drop Dead Legs. That groove, that's like the best AC/DC groove, but with actual good technical guitar playing. Oh, so good. I love Drop Dead Legs. That song is so phenomenal. And apparently I had to mention one or the other first, so I have to put Purple Rain in number one. Like I said, it's not necessarily so those two albums flip-flop so much, but Purple Rain. Obviously, When Doves Cry, that was the first time that I could hear that even just one 15-second riff at the beginning. I thought, that guy knows how to play guitar. Even when I was pre-teen, I could tell that I love Prince all through my metal days, and I got so much shit for it from people. We used to cover Darling Nikki, and that is a freaking heavy balls to the wall song to play. Foo Fighters do an excellent cover version of that kind of sounds like the way it sounded when we played it. There was originally a bass line on When Doves Cry, and he ended up cutting it out in the final mix, which who would do that? Who would release an R&B track in the 80s without a bass line? I mean, it was just only Prince can get away with something like that. The Beautiful Ones is great. I would die for you. That's a great song. Computer Blue is my favorite because he does that whole thing at the end where it sounds like, I mean, he used it in the movie, so it is part of the soundtrack, but it's just a beautiful piece of music, the last half of Computer Blue. It's all instrumental, and his guitar... Oh, I get so excited. And then obviously the title track, Purple Rain, is just perfect. It's a perfect song. It's a perfect song. His version at the Super Bowl when it started raining on him was beautiful. Since his passing, a lot of cover bands have started doing Purple Rain, and it's kind of insulting in a way because nobody can embody that the way he did. And I just feel like they just like covering Stairway to Heaven. Just please don't. The very end, in the tail off, he's got this weird thing going where the keyboards and the guitars kind of trail off, and they do a weird little counter melody thing where one's playing one thing and another, and people don't even think about that part. That solo has the best soulful playing ever. Oh, I forgot about Let's Go Crazy. That song, dearly beloved, we gather here today to get through this thing called life. Oh, in the later days, he always played that about half the tempo. We played it more as like a mid-rocker thing, which is kind of fun. But that song has a fiery guitar solo too. And then the end where he just goes off, that was when I was like, oh my God, that guy is one of the best guitar players ever. Oh, once again, I can't talk about it enough. I can't even express enough how important that album is to me. Anyway, that's my top 10 list. I kind of just rambled. I'm not going to edit this at all. I appreciate you prescribing if you stuck around this long. I'm going to try to get through the last of these 1984 lists, year ending in 4 lists. I've got some 94 stuff and a couple more 84s. But now that we're swinging into 2025, I want to get on to the year ending in 5 lists. And I'm curious to see how some of those pan out, if they end up being as exciting of lists as this year. I just jumped in on these years ending in 4, and between 74, 84, and 94, it's just been phenomenal, the music that it's come out in those times. So we'll see if the year ending in 5s end up being the same. And stick around, watch some more of my videos, check it out. I'll get back to you later.